Imagine two people, same species, same brain, same physical strength. One of them owns a house, 3 cars, and a bank account with more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. The other owns nothing. Not a home, not savings, not even enough for tomorrow's food. Now here's the question nobody asks. When did this become normal? Because for most of human history, this situation was not just unusual. It was impossible. There was a time when no human being on Earth was significantly richer than any other. Not because everyone was equally talented, not because the world was fair, but because the system itself made extreme wealth accumulation physically impossible. And then something changed. One small shift in how humans lived triggered a chain reaction that eventually produced every billionaire, every slum, every stock market, and every wealth gap that exists in the world today. This is the story of the most consequential moment in economic history, the moment humans invented inequality. Let's start at the very beginning. For roughly 90% of the time our species has existed, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. Small bands of 20 to 50 people, moving constantly, taking what the land provided, sharing almost everything. And the sharing was not optional. It was not charity. It was survival strategy. In a world where food could not be stored for long, where illness could strike anyone, where a single bad hunt left your family hungry, the only insurance policy available was your community. You shared your surplus today because tomorrow you might have nothing, and you needed others to share with you. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer communities consistently observe the same pattern. When a hunter returns with a large kill, he does not keep most of it. He distributes it across the entire group. Status in these communities does not come from accumulating resources. It comes from giving them away. The most respected person in the band is often the most generous, not the wealthiest. There is a word for this system that economists use: a gift economy. Wealth flows outward, not upward. And inequality, the kind where one person has vastly more than others, is actively prevented by social pressure. So why did this system work so well for so long? The answer comes down to one simple physical constraint. You cannot accumulate what you cannot carry. A hunter-gatherer family moves camp regularly, sometimes every few weeks. Every single possession has to be physically transported by the people who own it. In that world, owning more than you can carry is not wealth. It is a burden. The idea of hoarding resources simply makes no sense when you have to walk to your next location. This changed around 10,000 years ago. Agriculture arrived. And with agriculture came something that had never existed before in human history: storable surplus. For the first time, a family could grow more grain than they needed to eat, store it in a container, and still have it months later. This sounds like a straightforward improvement, and in many ways it was. But it also introduced something entirely new into the human equation. For the first time, it was possible to have significantly more than your neighbor. And more importantly, it was possible to keep it. The first signs of wealth inequality appear in the archaeological record almost exactly when agriculture does. Burial sites from before agriculture show almost no difference between graves. Simple objects, similar quantities, no hierarchy visible in the ground. Then farming begins, and the burial sites change dramatically. Suddenly, some graves are filled with elaborate objects, jewelry, tools, symbols of status. Other graves contain almost nothing. The gap between the richest and poorest graves, which was essentially zero for hundreds of thousands of years, begins to grow almost immediately after the first seeds are planted. But here is the part that most history books skip. The earliest inequality was not about money. Money had not been invented yet. The first form of wealth that could be accumulated and hoarded was land. Who controlled the most productive fields? Who had access to the best water sources? Who owned the most livestock? These were the questions that began to separate the rich from the poor, long before the first coin was ever minted. And once land ownership became established, a second mechanism appeared that made inequality almost self-reinforcing. Inheritance. A farmer who worked hard and accumulated good land could pass that land to his children. Those children started life with an advantage their neighbors did not have. Their children started life with an even larger advantage. Within a few generations, the descendants of the earliest successful farmers had structural advantages that were almost impossible for latecomers to overcome. This is the moment. Not the invention of money, not the rise of capitalism, not the Industrial Revolution. This is the actual birth of the wealth gap that still shapes every society on Earth today. What is most striking about this story is how recently it happened. If you compressed the entire history of our species into a single year, agriculture arrived on December 22nd. The entire recorded history of civilization, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, the Middle Ages, the Industrial Revolution, the modern world, fits into the last 9 days of that year. The equal world, the world where extreme inequality was physically impossible, lasted for 11.5 months. The unequal world has existed for 9 days. We did not evolve for this. Our brains, our psychology, our deepest social instincts were shaped by 350 days of living in small equal bands where sharing was survival and hoarding was shameful. The anxiety people feel about money, the deep anger at inequality, the persistent sense that something about the current distribution of wealth is fundamentally wrong. None of that is irrational. It is the sound of a 300,000-year-old social operating system encountering a 10,000-year-old problem it was never designed to handle. The next time you look at the gap between the richest and poorest people in the world and wonder how it got so large, remember this. It started with a seed, planted in the ground, by someone who realized, for the first time in human history, that they could own more than they could carry, and that nobody could take it away.